Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I am thrilled to have in our virtual audio, studio today, Tim Tobin. And why should you be interested in listening or in this conversation, in this discussion with Tim Tobin? He is a seasoned senior executive and leadership development professional committed to helping individuals and organizations reach their greatest potential. He's held senior level leadership, learning, and operations positions in multiple global organizations, including Booz Allen Hamilton, Marriott International, and currently at Choice Hotels International. Tim is a frequent leadership speaker and mentor. He is the author of The Clarity Advantage: Overcome 10 Communication Pitfalls and Boost Your Influence. A second book, Peak Leadership Fitness: Elevating Your Leadership Game. And a third book, Your Leadership Story: Use Your Story to Energize, Inspire, and Motivate. He's been recognized with several industry awards for leadership program excellence, and he earned his doctorate in human and organizational studies from George Washington University. Tim Tobin, I am so glad that you're here. Why don't you say a few words about yourself to our audience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's good to be here. Good to see you all. That was a great introduction. I really appreciate that. In addition to being an author, I am also an endurance athlete. I think that may have come up somewhere in the conversation. I think that's interesting because I use some of the principles and the concepts that really kind of push me through some of those endurance events. And I pull that through my writing and some of my guidance for how I help people be the best that they can possibly be.
Okay, so before we get to, more of Dr. Tim Tobin, and we've got so many paths of intersection here, let's talk about what is an endurance athlete first.
So an endurance athlete specifically for me is Ironman. So it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a 26.2 mile run, all back to back in the same day. So that's an example. And then marathons are another endurance sport too. So there's interestingly a lot of parallels between that and leadership specifically. So I think I always like to draw those connections out where we can.
Well, swim, bike, run, what are the comparisons?
Well, number one, anytime you're going to do any kind of fitness, it's really a journey into self-discovery, right? So you're going to have an opportunity to get to learn a lot about yourself along the way. You're certainly going to have some obstacles that you need to overcome. You're going to need passion and commitment. You got to have a game plan. So when we talk about being an effective leader, that's a theme that I constantly refer to is have a plan. You got to take that first step. And I will tell you this, not to be unstated here, but preparation impacts performance.
Say that again, Tim Tobin.
Yes. So preparation impacts performance. And if I took out the word endurance athlete and I just said, let's talk about leadership or, communication as part of the Clarity Advantage book, those are the things that make all the difference. And what I've noticed is the people that in either event, whether it's endurance athlete or something, run around the block or walk around the block, if you don't put in the time, you're not going to get the results that you want to.
Yeah, and I like how it's at least in many ways it's judgment free. Preparation impacts performance, PIP though, but performance improvement plan. I mean, it's a way of thinking about how do we change and grow, and it's a very inviting way to think about it. Tim, what led you to GW and doing a doctoral in human and organizational systems or organizational stuff?
Yeah. So I think it's part of my personality to really see how I can continuously learn and grow and improve. And it really starts maybe a little bit earlier in my undergraduate. And as I went through that program, really started to get an interest and hunger for learning. And as I got exposed to a little bit more of the formalized learning, just wanted to see how far I could take it, continue to learn and grow. And interestingly enough, I mean, I think that's something many, many years ago, I finished up that doctoral program, but it is something that defines who I am and how I think about organizations and people and how we can get the most out of each person and each organization.
It's great. You have 3 books out there. My second one, because the one between the first one and this one, I sort of threw in the trash. It didn't have a wide enough audience, a big enough audience to which to appeal. It was a book on organization development, and maybe I'll use it in some other way. I'll chop it up in some other capacity in the future. But my next book is October, hopefully October 15th, if everything stays on track, which goes by the same name as this podcast, The People Dividend, but we add leadership strategies for unlocking potential. And let's talk about your books. Just take our audience through the 3 books and sort of what the big lesson is. Here's one thing I'll say as you think about that, and the big lesson is one thing I didn't know until his death was last year, maybe the year before, Ed Schein, that as you look at all the books that Ed wrote, I mean, they were really all answering a single question, which was about what it means to help or what it means to be a helper. And I didn't have all of that connection as I, read through some books of his, even with the same title. So, but it's interesting. So talk about your 3 books. And
yeah, it's interesting because I do think there's a common theme that runs through mine as well, both from an approach standpoint, which is really built upon self-awareness and helping people better understand who they are as employees, as people, as leaders, and related to that is how they can be the best version of themselves. And I think related to that is we live in such I hate to sound like cliche here, but fast-paced, high volume, results-driven environment that we don't take time to focus on some of the things that are important. So what I hope my books do is help set you up with a guide on where to start, some good stories along the way, from some real life vignettes that you can relate to that kind of say you're not alone, but also how to get the most wherever you are in the development process. So where I need to be versus where one of my colleagues is versus the next person. Everyone's at a little bit different place. And I think to really resonate, I'm hoping my books meet you where you are. So where in story, there is your leadership story is really all about self-awareness and who you are as a leader, and using story as both a metaphor and a process to be the best leader you can be. And then Peak Leadership Fitness, we talked a little bit about that. It's using fitness as a metaphor, but it's how do you develop yourself and these core skills along your journey, and using fitness as kind of make sure you're taking your pulse, you're building flexibility and strength and endurance and those types of things that really resonate for people that are into that kind of world. And then credibility, the latest book is called The Clarity Advantage, and it really draws a connection between how clear communication will drive influence and your credibility.
Now, what prompted the 3rd book?
From a real practical standpoint, my co-author, Roger Peterson, we had done some work together over the years, and he reached out to me and he said, I've got this great idea. What do you think? And we started noodling together on this concept of critical thinking and the importance of critical thinking to drive influence. And that started to evolve really over this concept of we communicate all day, every day, whether it's verbally, non-verbally, body language, we're receiving messages, but no one really spends a lot of time on how to get that right. And I think a lot of times the opposite holds true, where people rush through things, they don't think about it, they don't put that effort in there, and as a result, their messages don't land the way they want them to.
Now, I want to explore with you what you're doing at Choice today. We have talked about some intersectionality at the beginning of the podcast. Tim and I ran a program at a similar at what I believe would be a similar location or identical location at a company called Marriott International. And when I ran this program, we had two versions of it, which was like a 4-week executive development program, a residential 4-week experience spread like once a quarter or so, I can't remember, and then a 1-week residential program. And essentially consisted of at a nice location, at a great location on the eastern shore of Maryland, close enough to the Washington, D.C. suburbs, but still had a bit of a country feel. And the program when I ran it, Tim Tobin, was essentially arrive on a Sunday, maybe leave on a Friday afternoon at lunchtime. And it was fireside chats every evening with some executive and lots of free time and a speaker a day, more or less. And a lot of camaraderie, I would say, accompanied that event. The groups of maybe 20 to 25 people. So that's what I recall about that experience.
Mike, you know what? You set the foundation for the program, because that model continued in my day as well. The themes and topics different, the model, the location, the same. So, we walked some of the same grounds and probably had similar experiences. And as you know this, there's a lot of value beyond the content. I mean, you're going to get ideas. You're going to get to, and this is a thing we don't do very often, but you have the opportunity to unplug from your day-to-day work. And, the joke that we used to make is where that location was is you really had to unplug because, connectivity was a little tough at times. So, but it allowed you to connect with one another. And that's a common theme with my work as well, is that the power of connections. And, when you think about leadership and the function of leadership, it really is not a solo endeavor. It's got to be something that you're doing for people, with people. You're getting to know them. And that's what that kind of a program that you were very much a part of and probably set the foundation for, that really built. It's not just the content. It's beyond that.
Yes, and you've chosen to work internally to an organization, at least for part of your gig. That changes for everybody. But let's talk about your work today.
Yeah, so it's evolved a bit. So rather than do facilitated programs like what you and I just talked about, I first was brought in to head up our franchisee learning, and that's evolved over time and through some successes and some needs of the business to really much more of an operations role. So now my responsibility is from a time a franchisee's contract executes all the way up to their hotel opening and then a little bit beyond. So how can we get them set up for success, both from a product standpoint as well as a people standpoint? And that's really how we look at the role. So it's everything from architecture and design, project management, quality assurance, and I still do have my hand in learning as well.
That requires so many different skill sets, and it's such a unique period in converting, opening, rebranding property. So how did most of these people who are in the franchise business, are they doing a conversion to a Choice brand, or how's that usually work?
Yeah. So we do both. And new construction, we've got a lot of franchisees that head down that path, and we've got the support for them as well. And as the environment shifts, lending and so forth, materials, typically you'll see a shift into a little bit more of a conversion environment. So we probably have 60 to 70+% conversion hotels that we're coming in and getting them set up to run on our platforms and what we call our franchisee success system as well.
Sure. So often involves a name change. Yes, no? Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay. So there's some rebranding that goes on. People wear different uniforms or T-shirts or whatever they need to wear in their hotel.
Absolutely. Really transforming from whatever their previous brand was into ours. And it's not only all the systems and tools and processes and programs that support that, but it is also the branding and how everything looks, the guest experience. We want to make that much more unique to one of our brands as they convert into one of our brands.
I suspect, like most of the big hotel companies, the Choice has a tier of brands, or is that right? Like, what would be some of the brands in the Choice world?
Yeah. So we're in the economy segment. We're the extended stay segment. So Econo Lodge, Woodspring is very prominent in the extended stay segment. Quality, comfort, sleep, Radisson, Cambria. I probably missed a few along the way, but those are some of the ones you'll see on a regular basis. And the newest to the family is Radisson, and that's got great brand recognition and a high interest rate. There's a lot of interest in the market for these what we call upscale brands. So it's an exciting time for sure.
Now, I sort of get the move from this more organizationally OD focused, learning focused role into what you are doing. I sort of understand, but what was the motivation, or did it just shift? Or tell us about that.
Well, it starts with my own personal career growth and interest to kind of move on and take on more, expand my role. But there's also a matter of fit. One of the things I didn't say as part of my introduction is years ago, actually going through one of those leadership programs, I had the opportunity to really spend some time with my own purpose and defining my purpose. And one of the things I identified is really, I think my purpose is built around helping people and organization achieve their greatest potential. And as that rolls off my tongue today, I can tell you there was a lot of work and thought that went in to get me there. But really, that's how, not just in work, but in life, whether I'm a mentor, a friend, a coach, those are the things that where I get my energy. And so when the opportunity here at Choice came up to say, hey, do you want to take on an expanded role, an expanded team? It was really a great intersection for both in the sense that I could continue to grow my career, but also lead a team of individuals into the opportunities to help them be their best and get the most out of it.
You know, a metaphor that we don't use very often with work teams is thinking about them like gyms. Like, I assume you go to a gym. I mean, fitness is a big part of your life. So you go to a gym and you probably go maybe 6 days, 7 days a week. I don't know, maybe. And, you know, we have a lot of comparisons to about teams to sports life and other civic groups. But what about team and gym?
So absolutely, I do go to the gym. I think I see a connection as far as like fitness and again, whether you choose to focus on your own process, you're going to get better results when you work with other people. You're going to be held accountable. You're going to hold other people accountable. There's a lot of social dynamics, positive social dynamics that you can experience in both environments. But, you know, much like I said this earlier, a lot of these common practices, whether it be leadership or communication or even teams and meetings, a lot of times we're in cruise control mode. We're going to get in there and we're just going to do what we've always done. And so I think we always need to challenge ourselves to ask questions. Are we getting what we want out of things? That's the gym. That's the team. That's my communication. But are there ways we can do things a little bit differently and a little better to get better results? And that fundamental questioning of things, I think it's hard to remember to do that all the time, but it's powerful when you do.
Why do people, particularly Tim, why do executives choose to have coaches?
Well, the ones that I've worked with and in roles that I've had and help people find coaches, I can tell you why they choose. Sometimes it is they are told to. You need to, you need to work on a few very specific skills, right? I feel like the ones that are most powerful is where that it's self-identified or at least accepted and appreciated, that says, yeah, this is a good way for me to get better. And so whether you're in a gym or whether you're in, in an organization, it provides an external perspective so that it's going to help you get a little bit better. And that's really what we're all trying to do here.
It's an interesting thing about coaching at the gym or at the team level, because often in the gym, coaching's one-on-one. It's you and the trainer or something. Maybe one-on-two, one-on small group sometimes. Very unlike most team competition. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think when you start getting in a one-on-one basis, you get it highly personalized to where you are today. I talked earlier about the importance of self-awareness and, fitness, leadership. Basically, growth and development is not one size fits all. So whatever growth and development you're pursuing, whether it's physical, mental, social, the more customized it can be, the better off you're going to be. And it makes me think of the way I think about leadership development as an example is there's really two purposes for it. And the first purpose is really around building a common language within your organization. And that's where it's most effective as a group. And then when you do it on an individual basis, say that again. Oh, for sure. So the most common example is employee onboarding. So you're going to bring a group of people in, and while that may not be leadership development per se, that is creating a common language. And then, there could be the program you and I talked about earlier. That is certainly building a common leadership language within that organization. I find the most effective leadership development and any development endeavors are when it's customized to you, the individual, and where you want to go and where you are and how you're going to get there. And so as we keep drawing these parallels between fitness and coaching and development, it is very similar in the sense that you're going to leverage someone else's expertise and they're going to push you in ways that maybe are a little outside your comfort zone. And that's really where development happens, is outside of the comfort zone.
Well, and for the executives with whom we work and the founders, C-suite leaders, aspiring executives, it costs a lot of money for this one-on-one work.
It does. And so if you have ways, if you have the luxury of a one-on-one coach, if you have a private coach at the gym, you have a private coach as a leader, great. Kudos to you. And I've been in organizations that support that to some extent. You certainly want to make those investments in people that are committed to the organization that have a pretty strong growth trajectory. I've seen coaching used in more of a almost a remedial, like we need to fix this. So that's another way to use it. But I think where we can continue to learn from one another is going to be your best opportunity. So, mentor circles, peer coaching, peer mentoring. One of the themes that run through my various books is definitely seeking feedback, getting at that. That's how you get the honest self-assessment and self-awareness. So building towards that.
I think you can do coaching with an executive, a founder, a C-suite person, aspiring executive, without self-other feedback. But I think you can enhance that coaching experience with self-other feedback, getting and adding that to your program. 100%. So that you know that when you're working with, someone like me, it is a bespoke, it's a tailored experience focused for successful people who, are ready for the next step to achieve their goals. I think many of the same things that you probably explore in your books.
It is absolutely. And what you're talking about, that is when feedback is at its best. when it's, again, personalized to you. And if you go through a leadership program and the way, your approach and the way you talk about